My name is Caleb Foster, and for most of my life, I've lived under the illusion that the world operates by simple rules. What you see is what you get. I've always been the type to dismiss the supernatural as mere folklore or the creative product of overactive imaginations. Life in the city is busy, structured, and comfortably mundane, leaving little room for pondering over the strange and unexplainable. My days were a predictable rhythm of work, social gatherings, and quiet evenings, where the unknown seemed like a far-off concept reserved for horror movies and ghost stories. If someone had told me my own life would intersect with the paranormal, I would have laughed them off, but reality has a way of humbling even the most skeptical among us. Being a graphic designer, I thrive on structure and precision, blending creativity with functionality. This love for order has shaped not only my work but also my approach to life. I'm meticulous in my routines, preferring predictability over chaos. My mornings are a ritual of strong coffee, morning news, and an hour of focused work before the world fully awakens. This routine gave me a sense of control, a firm belief that I could organize my way out of life's uncertainties. That belief, however, was shaken to its core the night I encountered something that defied all logic and reason. For years, I've lived in a modest but comfortable apartment on the edge of the city. The place has a quiet charm, nestled between a small bookstore and a cozy cafe I frequent almost daily. I've always loved the sense of community here, where familiar faces nod at you in passing and conversations spill into the streets on warm evenings. It's a safe space, my sanctuary from the noise and unpredictability of the wider world. Nothing about this place or my life hinted at the storm that was about to unfold. I've never been particularly superstitious. Black cats crossing my path didn't faze me, and I never thought twice about walking under ladders. The closest I came to indulging in the supernatural was the occasional horror film on a lazy weekend. Even then, I saw those stories as nothing more than entertainment, a temporary thrill to be enjoyed and then forgotten. My skepticism was a shield I carried proudly, insulating me from the unknown. That is, until I met her. She came into my life like a whisper in the dark, subtle and unassuming at first. I met her one evening at a bar just a few blocks from my apartment. It was one of those spontaneous nights where plans seemed unnecessary, and I decided to unwind with a drink after a long day. The moment she walked in, there was something about her that commanded attention, a quiet confidence paired with an almost otherworldly allure. Her presence was magnetic, drawing people in without her even trying. We struck up a conversation, and it felt as though I had known her for years. She had a way of making you feel seen, as if her gaze could pierce through your exterior and uncover your deepest truths. There was a mystery to her, a complexity that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I didn't realize then that I was stepping into a web of intrigue and danger that would unravel the very fabric of my reality. Her name, as she introduced herself, was Celine. At first, Celine seemed like a dream come true, a woman who matched my wit, shared my humor, and seemed genuinely interested in my work and passions. She spoke with a kind of wisdom that belied her years, her words laced with an almost hypnotic charm. There was a depth to her stories, a richness that made the mundane seem magical. Yet, beneath her enchanting exterior, there was something that didn't quite fit, a subtle discord I couldn't identify but chose to ignore. I had no reason to doubt her intentions. Why would I? People meet, connect, and part ways every day in this city. Our paths crossing felt like a coincidence, another small chapter in the ever-turning pages of urban life. I chalked up her magnetic pull to simple chemistry, a spark that sometimes happens between strangers. But as the evening wore on, there were moments that gave me pause, fleeting instances where her eyes seemed to hold shadows that didn't belong. Even with those fleeting moments of unease, I couldn't deny that Celine fascinated me. She spoke of places I had never been, cultures I had never studied, and ideas that seemed to blur the lines between reality and imagination. Her voice was like a siren song, soothing yet unnervingly persuasive. I told myself I was overthinking, that I should relax and enjoy the night. Little did I know, that decision would lead me into the darkest encounter of my life. By the end of the night, I felt both exhilarated and strangely drained, as if my soul had been exposed to something it wasn't meant to see. Celine left with a lingering smile, promising that we'd meet again soon. I should have felt excited or at least curious, but instead, I felt a gnawing discomfort I couldn't explain. It was as though her departure left a void, a quiet disturbance in the atmosphere that followed me all the way home. The city, which usually felt so alive, seemed eerily silent as I walked back to my apartment. The streetlights flickered, casting elongated shadows that danced on the pavement. My mind raced with fragmented thoughts, trying to reconcile the captivating woman I had met with the strange undercurrent of unease she left in her wake. Looking back, I realized that unease was my first warning, a signal I was too naive to heed. That night, I lay in bed replaying our conversation, the memory of her face etched vividly in my mind. Sleep didn't come easily, and when it finally did, it was restless, plagued by dreams I couldn't fully remember but left me waking with a cold sweat. Something was changing, something I couldn't quite grasp but could feel deep within me. Meeting Celine was no ordinary event. It was the beginning of a story I would never forget, a story that would change everything I thought I knew about the world. It's strange how life gives no warnings before everything shifts. One moment you're secure in your routines, confident in your understanding of reality. The next, you're plunged into a darkness you never knew existed, grappling with forces that defy explanation. Meeting Celine was the catalyst for that shift in my life, a door to a realm I didn't even believe in. Looking back, I wonder if I was destined to meet her or if it was all an elaborate trap set by powers far beyond my comprehension. Celine and I crossed paths again just a few days after our first meeting. It wasn't a planned encounter, or so I thought at the time. She seemed to appear out of nowhere as I was strolling through the park during my lunch break, her graceful steps making no sound on the cobblestone path. She greeted me with a smile that felt both warm and unervingly sharp. There was an eerie familiarity in her presence, as if the universe had nudged her into my path deliberately. Despite the nagging voice in my head telling me to be cautious, I found myself drawn to her again, as if I had no choice in the matter. Sin of envy, Leviathan. Envy, the resentful longing for another's success, possessions, or qualities, is personified by Leviathan, the demon of envy. Leviathan is depicted as a serpent or sea monster, embodying the corrosive and consuming nature of envy. This sin turns individuals against one another, breeding hostility, resentment, and division. Leviathan's power lies in his ability to make people focus on what they lack, rather than appreciating their own blessings. Under his influence, individuals compare themselves to others, leading to feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, and bitterness. Envy often results in destructive actions, such as gossip, sabotage, or outright hostility. In society, Leviathan thrives on competition and comparison, which are exacerbated by social media and cultural pressures to appear successful or perfect. Envy poisons relationships, creating distrust and animosity. It also blinds individuals to their unique gifts and potential, trapping them in a cycle of dissatisfaction and regret. The impact of envy extends beyond personal relationships, influencing workplaces, communities, and even nations. Leviathan's influence fuels conflicts, undermines unity, and prevents collaborative progress. It creates an environment where success is seen as a threat, rather than an inspiration. To overcome envy, one must cultivate gratitude and celebrate the achievements of others. Recognizing that everyone has a unique path and purpose weakens Leviathan's grip. Acts of kindness and encouragement further dismantle envy's power, replacing resentment with love and compassion. Sin of wrath, Azazel. Wrath, the uncontrolled and destructive expression of anger, is embodied by Azazel, the demon of wrath. Azazel incites rage, violence, and vengeance, driving individuals to harm others and themselves. His influence is evident in acts of cruelty, hatred, and the inability to forgive. Azazel preys on unresolved emotions, magnifying feelings of injustice and betrayal. He convinces individuals that revenge will bring satisfaction, leading to cycles of violence and retribution. Wrath often blinds people to reason and empathy, causing them to act impulsively and destructively. The consequences of wrath are profound, affecting not only the individual but also families, communities, and entire societies. Azazel thrives in environments of conflict, where anger escalates into hatred and violence. His influence is evident in wars, domestic abuse, and even self-destructive behaviors. Overcoming wrath requires practicing forgiveness, patience, and understanding. Recognizing the destructive nature of anger and seeking constructive outlets for emotions can diminish Azazel's power. Turning to God for guidance and strength in moments of anger can help restore peace and harmony. Sin of sloth, Belphegor. Sloth, often misunderstood as mere laziness, is more deeply connected to spiritual apathy and the avoidance of moral or divine obligations. This deadly sin finds its demonic counterpart in Belphegor, a demon of sloth who thrives on indifference and complacency. Belphegor whispers the lie that effort, devotion, and striving for righteousness are futile, leading individuals to neglect their responsibilities both to themselves and to God. Belphegor's influence manifests in various ways, from procrastination and idleness to a deeper disconnection from spiritual growth. While physical laziness is one aspect, the greater danger lies in spiritual sloth, a refusal to engage with one's faith, avoiding prayer, worship, and acts of love and service. He convinces his victims to prioritize ease and comfort over discipline and sacrifice, weakening their resolve to pursue the path of righteousness. In modern life, sloth often disguises itself as distraction or overwhelm. People consumed by entertainment, technology, or constant busyness might believe they're productive, but in reality, they're avoiding meaningful pursuits. Belphegor thrives in a world that prioritizes instant gratification, making true growth and effort seem unnecessary or unappealing. The consequences of sloth are profound, leading to stagnation, missed opportunities, and spiritual emptiness. Relationships suffer when individuals fail to invest time and effort, communities weaken as people neglect their responsibilities, and faith diminishes when God is deprioritized. Belphegor uses these effects to deepen his hold, perpetuating cycles of apathy and disconnection. To overcome sloth, one must cultivate discipline, mindfulness, and purpose. Small, consistent acts of faith and effort can dismantle Belphegor's influence. Recognizing that growth and fulfillment often require sacrifice and perseverance empowers individuals to resist sloth and re-engage with their spiritual and moral duties. I stumbled through the darkened streets that night, the echo of Celine's chant still reverberating in my ears. My body was drenched in sweat, my heart pounding as if it might burst. The air around me felt heavy, suffocating, as though some unseen presence still clung to me. Each step away from her apartment brought a sliver of relief, but it was fleeting, overshadowed by the fear that I was being followed. I dared not look back, convinced that if I did, I would see Celine's glowing eyes or worse, the writhing figures from the mirror, pursuing me. I was alive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line I was never meant to approach. By the time I reached my apartment, I locked the door behind me and collapsed onto the floor, my chest heaving. My mind was racing, replaying every detail of the night over and over again. How had I not seen the signs? The strange way she knew things about me, the inexplicable chill in her apartment, the artifacts and symbols I had ignored. It all made sense now, but it was too late. Celine had been far from ordinary. She had been something ancient, something dark, masquerading as a woman. I had invited her into my life, oblivious to the danger I was stepping into. That night, sleep was a distant hope. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, beautiful and monstrous all at once, smiling at me with that chilling grin. The darkness in my room felt alive, pressing against me, watching me. I jumped at every sound, my senses heightened and raw. I could still feel the oppressive energy from her apartment, as if it had followed me home, infecting the very air I breathed. I buried my head in my hands, trying to convince myself it was over, that I had escaped. But deep down, I knew it was not that simple. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. The days that followed were filled with paranoia. I stopped going to the places I frequented, afraid of running into her or, worse, something she had summoned. I avoided mirrors, terrified that I would see those distorted figures staring back at me. Every shadow seemed to stretch unnaturally. Every gust of wind whispered things I couldn't quite hear. I became a shell of the man I once was, exhausted, paranoid, and haunted. My friends noticed the change, but how could I explain? How could I tell them that I had encountered something far beyond human understanding? They would think I had lost my mind, and maybe I had. In my desperation, I turned to research. I read books about witchcraft, the occult, and ancient rituals, searching for answers. I learned about protective symbols, wards, and ways to cleanse negative energies, though none of it brought me comfort. The more I read, the more I realized how dangerous Celine truly was. She hadn't just been dabbling in dark arts. She had embodied them. Some texts spoke of witches who could bind souls or summon entities that fed on human fear. I shuddered at the thought, wondering if that was what she had intended for me. Had I been a pawn in some larger ritual? Or had I simply been unlucky, stumbling into her twisted world? Eventually, I took steps to reclaim my life, though it wasn't easy. I moved to a different city, far from the place where I had met Celine. I threw away my old belongings, believing they might carry lingering traces of her energy. I sought out people who claimed to understand these dark forces, healers, spiritualists, and priests. Anyone who could help me feel safe again. Some listened to my story with knowing nods, offering prayers and charms. Others dismissed me entirely, suggesting I had dreamt it all. But I knew the truth. What I had seen was real, and it had changed me forever. Despite all my efforts to move on, the experience left scars on my mind and soul. I became hyper-aware of the world around me, never trusting a stranger's smile or an unexpected kindness. Celine had taught me that evil doesn't always wear a monstrous face. It can be beautiful, alluring, and persuasive. It can lull you into a false sense of security until it's too late to escape. That knowledge has stayed with me, a constant reminder to tread carefully, for darkness often hides in plain sight. I have grown wary of the unknown, of the shadows lurking at the edges of our reality. Years later, I sometimes wonder what became of her. Is she still out there, weaving her spells and ensnaring the unsuspecting? Did she move on to another city, another victim? Or does she still remember me, the man who disrupted her ritual and escaped? The thought chills me to my core, for I fear that our story might not truly be over. I wake up some nights drenched in sweat, convinced I hear her voice calling my name. The line between nightmare and reality blurs, and I am left with the same question. Will she return? If there is one thing I have learned from this ordeal, it's that the supernatural is not merely the stuff of legends or old tales. It is real, and it is far closer than most of us care to admit. I was lucky to escape that night, but not everyone is so fortunate. I now live with a sense of gratitude that I survived, and gratitude that I have the chance to warn others. Evil doesn't always announce itself with fangs and claws. Sometimes, it smiles at you from across the bar, offering nothing more than a friendly conversation. To those listening to my story, I urge you to trust your instincts. If something feels off, no matter how small or insignificant it seems, do not ignore it. Evil often disguises itself as beauty, and danger hides behind charm. Do not let curiosity lead you where you are not prepared to go. My encounter with Celine taught me that we are not as alone in this world as we think. There are forces at play that most of us will never understand. Forces that can consume us if we let them. Stay vigilant and stay safe.